Ladies and gentlemen, we see a lot of red across the board. We're going to be breaking down everything that you need to know, especially what's happening in the aftermarket hours. Big details that need to be heard before we see the next trading session that opens. We do have Palantir Technologies sitting at a very important level of support that could be tested, and I think, in my opinion, it might fail due to some of these other outstanding variables. Semiconductor chip stocks have a decent correction today. Nvidia is leading that pressure. And now in the after hours, you have the Department of Justice that issues a subpoena towards Nvidia that is continuing the selling pressure. We see the volatility index that is starting to really gain. Crypto's coming down. A lot of things that we need to break down. If you are a new or returning viewer, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and of course, not a financial advisor. I'm collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, what you see here on Palantir Technologies, closing here at 30.51, basically sitting at this $30 level of support here in the after hours. Now, the last time Palantir's hit 30, we've had an important reversal that was triggered. Palantir has been consolidating, holding above the 30s here in the 33. If we lose support, which I think could be possible here in the short term, not to be a bear on Palantir, I'm bull in the long term. We're going to be talking about it in just a second. But there could be possible opportunity here for dollar cost average. And if Palantir fails the 30, depending on what's going to be happening with these other variables, there could be more of a correction that is ahead, just from a technical basis and what we're seeing. One of the big things in the culprit that I think is leading to this domino effect is looking at Nvidia right here. Closing out 108, down about 10% on the day, over 10% in the after hours, sitting at 105. Now, Nvidia at $100 is going to be incredibly important to see if we see the buy the dip buyers that come in trying to get it at an opportunity for Nvidia on the dip. We see here, remember, in the beginning of August, Nvidia came down to about this 99 right here and had support, launching it back up to the 130s. One thing that we are seeing, though, in the general markets, S&P 500 down about 2%, NASDAQ down about 3.26%. So the question is this just an Nvidia problem? I don't think so, because we're seeing a lot of things across, not just the national, but the global economy right now. They're showing signs of red. Now, talking about Palantir, we have some interesting articles to talk about right here. Will Palantir stock hit $50 in 2024? Right now, at the rate of what we're seeing things and with the uncertainty that we're seeing in the market, I don't believe so, in my own personal opinion. Talking about, is the rise sustainable? Now, first and foremost, and talking about diversification here, we've seen Palantir that has really diversified and brought a lot of exposure to its company and improving its clientele with AIP. These governmental contracts have been a great way to build trustworthiness and credibility, but looking at the stock prediction for 2024 and at the 12-month forecast, sitting at $25, and most of the analysts that are rating at a hold. Now, in terms of the highest price targets, we've seen this Dan Ives from Webush, pretty much always a Palantir bull at $38, the lowest price targets here at $9. So the fact that a lot of the people on Wall Street are saying this is a hold right now, we do know that valuation is one of the biggest criticisms from PLTR. This kind of makes sense. And it makes sense in the sense that we're looking at the data right here from the perspective that commercial revenue, even though we did have a good quarter earnings report for PLTR, it only grew 6%, while commercial customer account only rose by 13%. And right now the fear is, are we seeing a little bit of a cooling off in the commercial side of things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for some of these stocks to cool off. But what the problem is that Wall Street is continuing to set these very high bars in terms of expectations. So what's the story in the next 5 years? I think that's going to be a bigger question that we need to answer. And this is where I still remain bullish within the next 5 years. With the amount of market capitalization that's anticipated to come into artificial intelligence and the boom that we've been seeing, this has only been in the last 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, that we've seen the AI boom that's really started to take off. Expecting to see extensions and basically improving upon itself into 2027 here, Palantir net income could reach $1 billion for the first time. In looking at price targets here for 2030, We could see on the back forecast revenue in excess of $8 billion. And what that really means in posting of earnings per share of over $1 for the first time, that can be a potential upside of over 100% at a price prediction at $64. Now, looking at that and where we are right now, it'll be interesting to see. I'll report back here by 2030. We'll come back here in 6 years and revisit that number. But no, in all seriousness, Palantir, in terms of not just weighing in on the macroeconomic variables right now, Palantir is still looking very well, continuing to grow upon itself, still remaining bullish on PLTR. Next earnings November 1st, 11 bullish earnings per share revisions and 0 bearish. This is where the problem is that lies, in my own opinion, is that Wall Street might be pushing these expectations too high in terms of earnings per share revisions and things like that. And one day, when it does not meet expectations, that's when I think we could see a pullback. That could open up a big opportunity for a lot of people that have been sitting on the sidelines. Now let's talk about what's going on in the market, especially here as Nvidia has just been issued a subpoena from the Department of Justice, which is really leading a lot of pressure within the market. One thing to say here is the stock futures, they are falling after the worst S&P 500 day since early August. Remember about 1 month ago exactly, we saw a big correction in the market that was met by a large reversal. We're seeing that correction right now that is taking place. S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ 100 futures are down. We're seeing Nvidia that fell 2% in the extended after trading hours after Bloomberg came out here, citing sources talking about the subpoena that we'll be talking about here. And traders are really bracing for further volatility in September. And this is historically a weak month for equities across the board. We mentioned this in yesterday's video, with many investors anticipating a pullback of 5% or more in the next coming weeks. Now, still, some bullish investors expect a decline in stocks could be a buying opportunity, saying that, hey, we're not entering this recession or any type of long bearish momentum yet, that this could be a pullback here. We're still continuing to see a bull market. The next 8 weeks are really going to be interesting. We're going to be talking about big corporate earnings that are coming up. We have interest rates with the full probability and the expectation that's being priced in right now before we speak for the first rate cut to be happening in September. And we're also going to be seeing the jobs report coming out this Friday, which is going to bring even more of an anticipation regarding those rate cuts. Now, semiconductor ETF, they suffer the worst day since March of 2020, tumbling 7.5% on Tuesdays, as we're seeing these big techs that are starting to sell off. Dragging the ETFs across the board in the broader market, of course, Nvidia, which has a big weight on these big indexes. And specifically, what we've seen is the subpoena was issued as part of an antitrust investigation. Now, in the late trading hours, what we've seen here, what Bloomberg has came out, despite the downturn, we have Nvidia that could easily be testing, like I said, that $100 of support. And it will be interesting to see what happens in light of this. And Nvidia is scheduled to appear at an investor event on September 11th. Now, with Bloomberg coming out here, Nvidia down about 11%. You have a lot of people that are starting to come up with a theory now, and the hypothesis, has Nvidia kind of hit its peak? Is it time for it to cool off? And you could have a lot of investors that got into Nvidia at much cheaper prices. And just looking at the risk to reward ratio, people could have been in Nvidia back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, pre-stock split. And saying right now, what's the reward of taking profits right now versus the hope in the risk that Nvidia goes back up to 120, 130, even with price targets that we've seen at 150. And could this domino effect come across the market as we're seeing a lot of these stocks that are experiencing a little bit of a pullback? I think that is possible. Right now with the VIX, as we speak, is up 33% for the volatility index at 2072 right now. If this gets up into the higher areas, and we're talking about like what we saw in August here with the VIX coming up here into the 40s, that's where I think things will become not just a little serious, but much more serious with the selling pressure that we see across the board. That's all that I have for you guys. What's your opinion here on Palantir testing the 30s? Do you think it's going to hold that support? What's your opinion on Nvidia holding the 100? Where do you see the market here within the next few days? And what's your prediction? I'd love to hear it. Peace out, take care, and I'll catch you guys all later. Have a wonderful day. And of course, take a big breath in some of these times.